Hi everyone, how are you? I was just thinking about the difference between doing a difference between being on a panel and having slides is for especially for an introvert like me. On a panel you can just pretend you're talking to three or four people, but now I gotta really realize that I'm talking to a full room. But it is good to have a full room. Today I wanted to unpack the rise of digital companions. Look, we're very early days, as we all know, for AI. In internet United States terms, it would be maybe Amazon's already been founded, but we're still very much pre-Google. Or in crypto terms, that might be Bitcoin, but definitely we're not Ethereum days, right? So it's obviously very early days, which means high uncertainty. And there are a number of different ways that many things related to AI obviously could play out. And that certainly includes the way that we interact with AIs, which is what I wanted to talk about today. But certainly, my claim is one vision of how things could play out is that once personality becomes ownable, a monetizable digital asset, and that crypto can play a major part in kind of realizing that. First though, let's talk about AI companions. Let's talk about the way that we interact with LLMs. And actually, this is something that fascinated me as a kid long before this industry exploded in just the last few years. And the reason it fascinated me as a kid is because I remember reading about an experiment. I was just like, 8, 9 years old, and as precocious kids do, reading about all kinds of stuff. And I remember reading about an experiment at MIT. I believe it was from 1964 to 1967, where a linguist was studying the way we relate to computers, and he set up basically the world's first chatbot. 3 years in, he suddenly realized that some of his assistants were interacting with the chatbot on their own free time in a way where, as if they were almost a very close friend, they were confiding secrets, even asking for advice, things like that. He actually found it so kind of alarming that he basically shut down the experiment. It was called Eliza, actually, the Eliza chatbot, which is why a lot of times AI companions you see that they're called Eliza is kind of a throwback to that. But the point is that there's something that is fundamentally different about the way that we interact with LLMs versus other types of electronic devices. So, I'm sure all of us use Google search, or maybe a few of us use Bing, et cetera, et cetera. But has anyone here ever, when they typed in Google, something in Google search, has anyone ever typed in thank you afterwards or please before? Has anyone in the room, anyone? No one, right? I certainly have not. But has anyone ever been in ChatGPT and found themselves being polite or saying thank you or please, or hey, I have a quick question for you, or if you don't mind? I know I have sometimes anthropomorphized ChatGPT. It just kind of happens, right? So there's something really unique that is happening when we interact with LLMs, which is which is kind of what I wanted to unpack, obviously today, right? That these are not just these are not just tools that we're calling as functions in the same way that search engines are. We inevitably start relating to them at least a little bit like a person, which is pretty weird, obviously, right? It's kind of mind blowing when you think about it. And this happens on a wide spectrum. So the little bit of the spectrum would be when you find yourself being polite to it as if it were a person. That's maybe one end of the spectrum. But at the very other end of the spectrum is there are whole companies like Replica and Character AI with as many as 20 million daily active users, where people are talking to AI companions. And actually, many of them are not talking to them for 2 minutes a day. They're talking to them. In fact, the mean rather, is 75 minutes a day. So this is like an enormous amount of time, and we're talking about tens of millions of users already. So that would be kind of the far end of the spectrum. These are clearly filling a major need in people's lives. Um, and so this is only the beginning, right? Because to many of us in this room, it feels kind of weird, right? Like it feels weird, maybe a little sketchy. It's like why would people even do that, right? For at least some of us, right? But if you think, early days of dating online, early days of many different types of technologies, people thought internet dating was weird, right? So it's hard to kind of judge, right? Um, Now, what is causing the explosion in people interacting with AI in a way that is akin to a type of companionship? I've listed three forces that are converging to produce that. Obviously, one is agentic AI. Number two is wallet growth. It's hundreds of millions of wallets across all the different chains, right? At least half a billion, right? And then, of course, the creator economy. But I would actually add a fourth to this, which I feel is the most important, actually, by far. And it's the way that we live our lives. We spend, certainly I do, and probably almost everyone in this room, we spend more and more of our day in the digital world every day, week after week, month after month, year after year. It just increases without bounds, right? Um, More and more time at our computer, more and more time being internet first rather than outside touching grass or whatever, as they say. There's an explosion in people working at home. There's an increasing untapped, unfilled need for human connection that is manifesting itself in a variety of ways all around the world. And we've seen this for years, right? We've seen that from people talking about for at least a decade how young people in Japan were young men especially were not they were kind of choosing to opt out of the rat race and the problems that caused. There's a phrase called tongping. Sorry about butchering the pronunciation, but the Mandarin phrase, which translates to laying flat, which kind of describes a fairly similar phenomenon. We all have seen the charts about the way in the United States that interactions between males and females have changed drastically, right? People aren't having sex. Like there's a lot going on, and a lot of that is a story about connection and loneliness, frankly. So I would add that as the fourth force that is converging to create a really tremendous need for AI companions. And and of course, you can already start to imagine that crypto could play a big role in this story. Uh, the- as an example, recently, as we all know, the fifth major version of ChatGPT came out, and as some of you may have seen, one of the initial decisions was to kill version 4.0. They decided we're gonna just scrap that, and everyone's on 5 now. You may also have seen that that decision was almost immediately reversed. And I'm not sure though. What's really kind of interesting and hasn't been talked about as much is why that happened. The main reason why that happened is because when people developed these deep interactions with ChatGPT 4.0, some of them has already companions, giving it a name and things like that, and some just more a feeling of ChatGPT 4.0 really knows me, really gets me. That was uh, not persistent with the change to ChatGPT 5. So people felt that they were losing this relationship that they had, whether they gave it a name or not. And so the pushback was so intense. People were really, really mad. They felt like Sam Altman had just like killed their friend. Is like a actual statement that people were saying that they took away my friend. And there were so many of these people that were so really, really mad about this that they basically had to immediately, especially very high users, in terms of time spent and things like that, that they basically immediately had to roll this back. It was absolutely an AI companion story that caused that decision to be reversed almost immediately. Um, so you can start to imagine already, as I was saying, that crypto plays a role in this story. Because if there's one thing that crypto people won't shut up about, it's having control of your things, right? It's having sovereignty. It's having ownership of all kinds of things in the digital world. And related to that, you might be starting to think about what are the related privacy considerations. And again, we can start to imagine that that could be a crypto story. It could be it's very, very easy to start imagining AI sovereignty, being able to have control of your creation, someone that you view almost as a person. It should be easy to start thinking, well, the type of information that I'm giving to these LLMs, it's fundamentally different than the type of information that Google has, which is already extremely powerful, as we know. So for me, for example, I mean, I would feel more comfortable with people having maybe 2 years of my search history versus like a couple weeks of ChatGPT. Like my internet search history, you could embarrass me, but my ChatGPT, I mean, you could get in my head. You know what I mean? Like you could really, you could probably make me tear. I mean, I don't know. It gets very personal, right? The way we give information to these things. So the point is that a lot of the tremendous value that we're creating when we talk to an AI companion comes from its memory, because it comes from what it's learning about us over time, or a digital twin, for example, its ability to represent us as an extension of us in the digital world comes from the rich store of information that we give it, right? So immediately that becomes very much a privacy consideration, which again, I would suggest crypto is kind of uniquely positioned to play a part in. To give an example, right? In my view, and again, as we discussed, this is all very early stage, so things could play out in a number of different ways. But in my view, in terms of digital twins, AI companions, and things like that, one of the obvious next things that will happen is that these things will become social. Well, if I have a digital twin, if I have an AI companion that is basically me, an extension of me in the digital world, I want certain people to be able to have certain types of information. And I want to control that in a very granular way. And I want to have a lot of comfort around privacy. I don't want, Sam Altman to know even more about me. No offense to Sam, but we all like privacy. We're crypto people, but I think you get. But anyway, so the point is, it's very easy to think about. Well, okay, so all of these rich stores of information, maybe that's encrypted blobs, maybe it's Arweave, IPFS, something like that. Very granular privacy protections. Perhaps that's an on-chain story. When my family interacts with my digital twin, they get certain types of information. A stranger, on the other hand, might only get, I don't know, my workout plan, something like that. So it's hard, obviously, to talk about a very rich and deep topic in only 15 minutes. I probably absolutely could keep going for an hour or two, but I hope I did kind of provoke some thinking today about where we're headed with respect to digital twins, AI companions, and such, and the way that we interact in the digital world with respect to LLMs and how it is so fundamentally different, especially qualitatively different from other types of interactions we have, such as a mere Google search engine or something like that. Okay, thank you. Good morning, and I hope everyone has a great day. Thank you.